This is not a test. Stay calm in an orderly fashion. Make your way to the lifeboats.
Mayday, the ship is sinking.
Good stuff. So welcome everybody who is joining us here on Wednesdays. As you know, Wednesdays are for recoveries. So today we're going to be meditating a little bit on the importance of connectedness in the recovery community and in early recovery and recovery in general. So Hunter, what are your thoughts on the importance of connectedness?
So here's my thing on it. No matter what pathway someone decides to walk, no matter what direction they decide to take their recovery, there has to be some form of relationships inside of that recovery. I've seen it time and time again where people have tried to do it with no connection, with no accountability, with no sort of support whatsoever. And it usually does not end well. I'd say probably 1 out of every 50 people who I've seen try it have actually made it through.
Sure.
So no matter, I just think no matter what you decide to do with your recovery, there has to be some form of support and some sort of connection put in place that is healthy for you.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. You know, even we teach, for those of you who don't know, we're both recovery coaches and recovery coach trainers through CCAR, Connecticut Community on Addiction Recovery. And one of the things that we do teach is about a singleness or a solo recovery, which I think is possible.
It is.
I 100% believe that, but I also believe inside of that, it is very difficult to have extended long-term recovery without a support system. And I think in solo recovery, especially, the long-term support system actually comes in kind of an archetypal model. It comes from the family, and it isn't necessarily like, it more or less is their support system may not be like, oh, rah, rah, sis, boom, bah, recovery, positive language, but it is something where the family, it's like, there's a high level of accountability here. So I don't want to screw up.
Right. And I mean, some people prefer not to talk about the recovery.
Sure.
I have a very significant person in my life that is in recovery and doesn't like to talk about it. You know, we don't bring it up. It's not, I never had an addiction. It's that I had a habit that I had to break. And that's okay for him. That's what he has chosen to make his recovery, right?
Sure. And it's like, is he done using?
Yeah, still sober.
Okay. So, where's the argument?
Right.
And I think that so often we see people who are inside of that domain and people immediately go to, well, if they didn't have, they're not in a meeting, so they must be using, or they're lying to you, or how is that working for them, or stuff like that. And it's like, we're talking about people's lives. And if they're improving, who am I to say what is going on with them?
Right. And I guess an important caveat there is like, it does go along with what you're saying, because the recovery support is there for that individual. It's a family member of mine, but it's not in the same sense of how a recovery support's there for me.
Sure.
Right. My recovery support's through 12-step meetings, through friends in recovery. I'm very recovery positive. I talk about my recovery a lot. I surround myself with a lot of people that are also in recovery, and that's my support.
Absolutely.
But to that person, his support is just family.
Well, absolutely. And I especially talking about connectedness to a recovery community, towards others, connectedness is so unbelievably valuable, because and I know, at least for me, so I shouldn't say we, but I know for me, when I was in early recovery, I listened way too much to the voice in my head. And I listened way too much to my thoughts and what I was thinking about things. And I thought I was, Grand Poobah of King Mountain. Like, I thought everything that I thought was right, and nobody else could tell me something different. And I know how to pursue my recovery. And it wasn't until, those barriers started to come down, and I had what I like to call is the revelation of recovery. That moment that it's like, maybe I should start being a little bit more humble. Maybe somebody does have something to teach me. Maybe somebody does have something to show me. It wasn't until I hit that moment that I started to really succeed in my life. I started to grow, not only in my recovery, but most of all as a person. I started growing my relationships, and I found that the connectedness is important because it allows for an exterior voice to be heard in your head other than your own. Because I don't know about you, but I'm pretty good at lying to myself.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, when we talk about connectedness to recovery, I think it is unbelievably important because it shows that you are willing to go the extra mile and you're willing to be accountable to other people. And when things don't go the way that you planned, you have people to fall back on. And when things are going the way that you planned, but you're starting to slip a little bit, those people are there to hoist you up and to also say, Hunter, what's going on?
Right.
Why, you lying to me? What's going on?
Mhm.
Well, and call you out for lack of a better term on your BS or your stuff.
Right. So I know this guy. He's in the recovery community, and one of his sayings, he says that he has two companies. He has one company that produces, I'll just say BS for the sake of not having to censor this. One company that produces BS and another company that buys it.
Mhm.
And that's so true for at least my recovery. I have one part of my brain that's like, it tells me I'm doing all this stuff and that I'm okay. And then I have the other side of my brain that's like, you're right, dude. You know what I'm saying? You got this, And I need that checks and balances in my life in the form of other people, other recovering addicts that can be
Absolutely.
like, hey, bro, you don't got this. How about you look at it like this? And it's not like they're telling me I have to. They're just giving me a suggestion and I'm choosing whether I want to listen to that or not.
Absolutely. And I've met people who are in recovery and I've met people who are in addiction that because they lack that external voice
Mhm.
and they only listen to their internal voice, they get themselves in such trouble. And then they fool themselves into thinking that they're being successful. They
Right.
fool themselves into thinking that the things that they're doing right now is adequate enough. It's good enough, instead of realizing like, lady, dude, you have so much more potential than what you're giving yourself credit for, but you're not willing to do the work because you're afraid. And I think that's a lot of what leads people to run away from the connectedness to the recovery community is that fear,
Mhm.
fear of judgment, fear of people, standing up at the meeting and saying like, you ain't nothing but a no good, dirty, rotten drunk,
Right.
and it causes such angst in individuals that if they just had a modicum of support, they'd be successful.
Well, and we talk about this in Recovery Coach Academy. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Lean into the tension because I mean, at least for me, those moments where someone said something that I'm like, I really don't like what you just said to me. Like that did not resonate well with me.
Sure.
Are the moments where I was like, maybe that person's right. And I think about that and then I'm like, maybe that person has a point. And maybe I should change that because it's never, if somebody tells me something that I want to hear, chances are it's not going to help me in my recovery.
Mhm.
If something tells me something that I don't want to hear, chances are that it's probably going to change my behavior and support my recovery.
Mhm.
That's just a reality of how I am. So it's about leaning into that tension and trying to get past that initial fear. Cause I have a major fear of judgment. I've had that since I was a child.
Mhm.
And I had to get past that. I don't care if people judge me anymore because if you want to judge me because my recovery is not in a good spot, good. Please do.
Sure.
Because that's what I need. That's how I need people to look at me in order to see flaws in me that I'm not seeing myself. Now, granted, some judgments aren't always accurate. Some judgments aren't always to be taken with a heavy weight, but those from the people I love and trust, I'll take those all day long.
And I think that really, we talk about that as, in kind of abstract language of, is it resonating?
Mhm.
Because there is judgment. There is judgment from people out there in the recovery community. And you and I know this more than most. And because we've taught a good portion of the recovery community in
Right.
our local area, that there are things that are said about you or around you or about your career and your job that it's like you could not disagree with more, or it just doesn't even, it washes over you. It's like it just went over you because it's like that's not based, that opinion is not based in an educated thought. That opinion is an opinion. It's not, it doesn't have any tread to it. And then there's things that like people say where it's like they're starting to echo the internal voice. The external voice is starting to say the things that you knew inside of yourself, and you're sitting there like, oh, how did you know that about me?
I think you're more sitting there like, I really don't like what you just said there.
Like, oh, goodness. Yeah. And you have a drawback from it. But no, I mean, how many times have you seen it where it's like people, you were just telling me about this a couple of minutes ago. We won't name names or anything.
Yeah, I'm not going to say any names, but yeah.
You were telling us, you were telling me at least about, I had this I had a run in with the individual again, and this is what they were saying, and they were somewhat disrespectful, right?
Yeah, I mean, and there was a ton of disrespect, and there was some truth in what the person was saying. This person is very wise and has a lot of good advice, but the way it comes across and some of the things that are said inside of that is like, no, and like there are pieces that I would take from it, but yeah.
Well, and I think that's where the wisdom comes, is digging around. I heard a pastor, a friend of mine, once. His name was, or his name is, not was, because that's past tense. His name is Tracy Edmond. He's pastor over at Walk in Truth. Yep, Walk in Truth Ministries in Lansing, Michigan. Good guy. If you ever get a chance, that guy is the guy that he's willing to sit down and have a conversation with anybody darn near about anything. He's just, and he's unbelievably smart too. I mean, I every once in a while I come across those people where you're just somewhat intimidated because you're like, great oogly moogly, man. You got so much knowledge and wisdom, and the guy's just a tour de force, and so is his team. Tony Clay and Kenny and all them. They're just fantastic people. So check them out if you ever get a chance. But he really resonated with me, no pun intended. But he talked to me once specifically about gleaning wisdom, or talking specifically about wisdom and knowledge is not unlike a steak, where it's you cut around the bone, you cut around the gristle, you cut around the things that it's like, there's not much for me there. I don't like the taste of it. It's just not going to do me any good. But you at least get to eat the meat. Mm-hmm. And I think that in situations like you were just telling me with this guy, and you talked to me earlier, it's the same exact principle, where it's like, this guy, there's things that he is saying that's pretty quality. It's a fair point. Maybe that is something I need to work on, or maybe that is something that the recovery community needs to work on, or that's interesting. You just pointed out something that maybe I didn't see before. And then there's stuff that is like, it's gristle. It's like,
yeah.
So
yeah, I guess it's kind of a acquired skill over time to be able to pick out
discern it out.
Right. Yeah. Pick out the good and leave the bad, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater sort of thing.
Absolutely. So talking in the connectedness to the recovery community, what would you say to somebody who is not sure if they really need to be connected to a community, and let's say they have a year or two sober or clean?
I've been there, done that.
And how did it work?
Yeah, not too well. So for me, and I still have connection. I still had connection in my job. Obviously I work in the recovery field. I still had connection with family members and things of that nature. But I didn't have the connection with the other addicts who were on the same level as me. I stopped going to meetings. I was hitting one every other week or something like that, just not enough. I stopped going to church. I stopped hitting my Bible studies, the things that are important for my recovery.
Well, I think you probably, I don't think this because I know this for a fact, but you ended up running into what I like to call the coach's folly, which if you remember, I told you about. I
was warned.
Be warned.
Didn't listen, but I was warned.
This and what do we say at the beginning of all of our classes?
It's like basically we'll tell you a lot of the stuff and you won't believe us, but then you'll go out and learn.
You're going to learn it. Right. We tell them all the time, this, and this. You're not going to believe me. As a matter of fact, right now, I can see it on your faces. Most of you don't believe me. You'll see.
Yep.
You'll see. But in your specific circumstance, you fell into the coach's folly, and we're recovery coaches, which is, I believe that my job can take the place of my recovery,
right? Because
I'm going to meetings with recoveries, because I'm talking about recovery all the time. I'm getting paid to talk about recovery.
Yeah,
what better job is this? Right. And then what?
You drain yourself out of it. I mean, talking about recovery, my job does help me a lot in my recovery, and I love my job, but it doesn't take the place of my support. I'm not going to lean on a client to support me in my recovery. I'm not going to tell my client about some weird messed up thoughts I'm having about wanting to go out and drink or something like that. I'm not going to talk to a client about that. I need to talk to somebody about that, because those things, if left unchecked, are going to turn into a reality. So that is the biggest thing I'll say to any professional watching right now or listening. If you struggle with addiction and you want to work in the addiction field, whatever support you have, not only keep doing it, but amplify it. Make it a bigger part of your life. Like right now, I go to 3 meetings. I go to 2 Bible studies. I go to church. I call friends. I call my sponsors. I talk to them. and those are important things for me, because without those things, it's not that I probably wasn't going to relapse. That's probably not a reality for me at this point. I mean, it's definitely a possibility.
So the door is always cracked.
Right. It's
Like,
always a
for those who are
possibility.
in addiction, the
Yeah.
door is always cracked. I've met people with 15 years of recovery and sobriety, of
Mhm.
abstinence-based recovery sobriety, which means that they're not using anything at
Right.
all, and then they go relapse. Why? Because they get that mentality of it will never happen to me, and then
Right.
something happens, and the thoughts creep in through that crack, and boom, they're gone.
Right. So I guess I'll rephrase that. Using my substance of choice starting out that way at that point was not a reality of something that was probably going to happen. But I lost my peace and I lost my serenity.
Sure.
And I lost my enjoyment in recovery, which was a dangerous place for me because I was miserable when I was an addict. I don't want to be miserable now. Like I want to be happy. I'm in recovery. Like life's not, rainbows and unicorn farts, but it is
Very
pretty-
vivid imagery.
just in case. Yeah.
Just in case
you
you're
wanted that
wondering.
image.
You're welcome.
But it's awesome. Like I enjoy life, and I need that recovery community in order to do that, because without that, it's just, I isolate. I do what my addict brain wants to do, and I pull myself away, and I start to get in my own head. I like to think like, oh, well, maybe you could do this, and this might be a good idea, and you're probably right about this thing, and you're a professional, bro, so you know what you're talking about, and I just start tricking myself.
And I think you just gave it the perfect word. We trick ourselves.
Right.
That cognitive dissonance that we talk about, which is the ability to see it clearly, think like, man, I got this, and then not follow through at all.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So yeah, I would say connecting this to the recovery community is important. And then I would also say the job of the recovery community as a whole, talking once again in that archetype, is to inform you when they see the canary in the coal mine. Because it's really easy, right? It's really easy. Obviously, we're both in recovery. We have a lot of recovery friends. We spent New Year's with each other, and we spent New Year's with recovery friends, playing games, joking around. Sober, didn't even need, it was no need. We had an amazing time. It was so fun. But at the same time, I look to you guys. I look to you. I look to our friends that will eventually be on the podcast, Trina Day, Brian Poland. I look to them to make sure that if something is wrong inside of me that I may know is there, that they're the ones that are going to probably be the first to give voice, that you're the ones that are probably going to give the voice to it. And that's what we call the canary in the coal mine. So can you give an example of or tell what the canary in the coal mine is?
So, yeah, I mean, it's basically people who can spot that weird thing inside you, that it can spot the flaws that are going on, or maybe a backslide or something like that. And more than likely person in recovery, or you're probably aware of it. But you're kind of denying it, or you're putting it off. And it's that echoing something that you already have said internally.
Yes. And for you to understand what the analogy, for those who are listening,
Listen to the song.
Listen to the song.
Canary in a coal mine.
Bird. No.
Copyright.
No, but the canary in the coal mine, the coal miners back in the olden times, back in the day, they used to, they would go down, just into the pits of the earth. And they would bring canaries in cages with them. And if there was a gas leak or something like that, or if there was like what was considered like a micro earthquake or something was happening, the canary would start to chirp. And it would start to really, really get loud, like something is wrong, I'm going to die, kind of thing. And that's when everybody knew around there, we need to get out of here. We need to run, like go. And when we talk about the canary in the coal mine of recovery, that's what we're talking about. The things in our life that start to slip, that we in our ignorance, we, in the midst of doing it, may not see it, but everybody else around us sees it. And if you build a stable, connected community around you, they will be the ones to step up and say, hey, look. So they will draw your attention to it. And that can be anywhere from like, normally I'm hitting maybe 3 meetings a week, and then all of a sudden I'm dropping down to 1. And my only response is like, well, I'm working a new job. It's like, okay, great. You're working a new job. Where are you doing your other 2 meetings at? Well, I'm not doing that. That's a problem. It's integrated into your recovery plan. It's integrated into who, your being, who you are. You are Hunter. You go to this many meetings a week. You never miss. You will cancel on your mother to make sure you don't hit this meeting, but all of a sudden you're not willing to do that.
Sorry, mom.
Sorry, mom. Sorry, mom. Yeah. So I do think importance of friends in the recovery community is it cannot be overstated.
Right.
It's something that absolutely needs to happen. So
Yeah, support something.
so support absolutely needs to happen. So let's switch up the beat a little bit and talk about a topic that I think both of us have had struggles with in our life.
Mhm.
Both of us, however, have found freedom in this, which is honesty.
I was actually thinking the exact same thing. I'm glad you brought that up. What my thoughts on honesty, what I was just thinking is connectedness in the recovery community does you jack if you don't have honesty going on.
Mhm.
That was my thought process on this, because before the behavioral changes start to hit, chances are your mental changes start to take your thoughts, right? The thoughts, the weird things, the way you think about certain things that are happening in your life all start to change before the actual patterns and self-care routines and things like that start to change.
And more oftentimes than not, people like you will notice the differences in your life fairly immediately, but you will not know if they're actually taking tread until people mirror those or echo those back
Mhm.
to you. I can't tell you how many times like I walk into a meeting or something in early recovery and somebody like, Christian, man, you're looking great. Got more, look like you're getting more meat on your bones. You're looking this, that's something
Right.
else.
Hey, you don't look like a zombie. bro,
Yeah.
you know?
And it was just like, well, it was like, whoa,
Yeah.
all of a sudden my outer appearance is starting to match my inner appearance. I'm really feeling these things. Or here's a big one. When people start to trust me with their car keys, when people start to trust me with their money, their wallet, when people start to trust me with a laptop, all of a sudden
Right.
I'm like, whoa, this is a profound feeling.
Yeah, I remember when I was at just real quick, a little tangent. When I started my first job, I got promoted to a key holder during my orientation. And I talked a little bit about my interview about the whole situation there. But
So
they gave
turn into his interview on Friday if you want to know more about that situation.
exactly. So they gave me keys to the building, gave me the code to the alarm, and gave me the code to the safe. And I'm like,
And he was overseeing by, we're not going to tell you what he was overseeing, but he was overseeing, let's just say tens of thousands of dollars in products.
yeah, and product, yeah, and everything there. Yeah. I mean, there was either way, I'm like, are you guys crazy? But I'm like, that reassured to me. I'm like, I have changed massively because now people trust me with things like this. I'm no longer that guy who's like, hide your purse, hide your wallets, because this dude's out here stealing everything.
Mhm.
I'm not that guy anymore. I don't have to be that. And that's an awesome feeling.
Absolutely. And I to really break into honesty, I think, and you could quote me, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that both in you and myself have found comfort and found that our reality is only achievable and is only possible with radical honesty.
100%.
Meaning we are honest about everything.
If I start lying, I die.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it for me,
It's the same thing with me. It's the same exact thing with me. I feel it emotionally, even if I haven't told a lie in, I don't know how many years, honestly. I mean, radical honesty to the
Better
point where,
man than I.
to the point where people don't sometimes like, they don't ask me at this point. They know why, because they know I'm going to be honest with them and they know exactly what I'm going to say,
Right.
And at the same time, if I want to be honest with somebody about something that I'm seeing in their life, I will always ask permission, can I have your permission to speak into your life,
Right.
kind of thing. But when it comes to honesty, it's like, it's the only freedom that I have. Even if I tell like, not even a white lie, but something that I'm not positive about,
Mhm.
or I say something I'm like, I'm not quite sure about that. I will be honest with them about that. Like, here's what I think,
Mhm.
not positive about that. And if somebody finds out something different than what I think, guess what? Honest enough with myself saying like, oh, that's a new piece of information.
Right.
It's one of my favorite things to say is like, if I say something and then I'm corrected on it, it's like, great, I just learned something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah,
I mean,
thanks.
I am now a little bit more smarter about this subject.
you
And
need
Hunter
all
will
that
tell
can
you,
get.
how many times have you talked to me outside of here where I will know an inordinate amount of things about a really stupid subject that you're like, I just asked a question. I didn't need to know the history of it.
That's pretty accurate.
That happens all the time.
Yeah, like the canary in a coal mine thing. Now you guys know about that.
Now, the more you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think recovery has to be grounded and rooted in honesty.
It does. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here because it wouldn't be honest and say that I have not told a white lie.
See what you did there.
Yeah, I know. that I've not had a little fib moment or something like that where I've said something that is not 100% the truth.
That's why I'm better than you.
I know, that's what I'm saying. As I said, better man than I, for real. There are times, but what's really cool is the conviction I feel after that, because I never used to feel that. You know what I'm saying?
Can you define what conviction is, especially for people who might be in young recovery? They may have heard the word conviction before, but they may not know what it means. So what does it mean?
Yeah, it's a guilt, basically. It's a guilty feeling about doing something that you know is not right.
And who does that guilt come from?
Yourself.
Yeah. That's a really powerful thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Like I used to be able to, I would steal $100 out of Christian's wallet if I had the opportunity. And Christian would ask me if I stole $100 out of his wallet, and I would bold-faced lie to him and say no and help him look for it.
I think it's very funny how you think that I would have $100 in my wallet. Like, what is this?
We work in the social work field.
Yeah,
We
what
ain't
is
got
this? The
money like that.
1950s? What, $100 in my wallet? Who's carrying that kind of money around?
Either way, but I mean, really, I could do that and not feel bad about it.
Mhm.
But now it's like, if I exaggerate and I say something that's not completely honest, I know it's not completely honest, and it kind of slips out, I feel a conviction about that.
Mhm.
And there's been times where I've been like, oh, whatever. And then
So
I
just
forget
write it off.
about
But I have been there when he corrects himself.
Right. And then I'm like, actually, that's not true.
To
That's an
be honest, I
exaggeration.
told a lie.
You're right. And that's a great thing to be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's nice too is I think that you have the support system, not me, obviously, but you have the support system that if that happens and you do speak up about it, they'll be like, oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, because you were willing enough to be able to do that right on the outset. I chastise you and make sure you never forget it.
Yes.
Because if you lie to me, we're through
Every day when I get to the office, he reminds me of that.
every single day.
Just kidding. That was a lie.
No, but with honesty, I don't think that we could stress the importance enough about
Right.
early recovery and about late recovery. Because here's the thing.
Any recovery.
How many times have you been in meetings, right, where you see somebody that for all intents and purposes has a decent chunk of time, 2 years, 3 years, but their behavior hasn't changed at all.
Right.
They're still lying to themselves, to other people. Their behavior hasn't changed at all. And it's like, you just want to shake them. You just want to say, you got out. You don't need to live this life anymore.
Right.
Because here's the thing, when you start to be radically honest, it is impossible for your life to not get better, period. Especially if you've been lying your entire life, or you've been partially lying your entire life. With radical honesty and recovery, you will find freedom.
Right. A certain program says 3 things that are indispensable are honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Those 3 things are 3 things you need in order to start recovering.
Absolutely. I mean, what very first steps of
Honesty.
any meeting worth its salt, which is, I admitted to myself
Mhm.
first things. It's like, what does that take? It takes honesty from oneself. I admitted to myself that I was powerless.
Mhm.
That's honesty with oneself, and you can't get anything better than that.
Right. Right.
So when we talk about radical honesty, we talk about the ability inside of yourself to just keep on telling the truth, because that's how I found recovery. That's how I found serenity,
Right.
which was I agreed with myself that when I started, that I was going to be radically honest, regardless of the consequence. That
Mhm.
means if I ended up in jail for confessing some to the crimes that I did, that would be okay. That means if I ended up losing friends and family and whatever it might be, because I'm confessing to the things in which I did, that would be okay. And
Mhm.
guess what? I did lose some friends. And guess what? I'm better for it, because the friends that I lied to and cheated and stealed, guess what? They probably did that to me too. And I don't need to be around them anymore. But time and time again, the friends that I cherish to this day, that many of which sit on boards with me and sit on different businesses and stuff with me, because I was honest with them, they started being more honest with me. And it's because of that vulnerability and honesty that we understand each other. And if a problem happens with them, I'm the first person that they call, because they know that I'm going to be honest about it, and they know that I'm going to help them with it.
Mhm.
If a problem happens with me, they're the first people that I call. And with honesty in early recovery, you will be able, kind of to our first point, to create a connectedness with people that is not based on anything other than mutual respect.
Right. For me, the biggest connection moments I've had in my recovery are thinking that I'm all alone in something
Yes.
that I've done, thinking I'm all alone in something that I'm thinking, or thinking I'm all alone in something that I do right now. And then I go, and this has never failed me. I go and talk to a couple friends and say, man, this is what I'm thinking right now. I'm thinking all this weird, messed up addict brain stuff that's saying like, I'm going to do this, and then this is going to happen or something. And I think I'm alone in that, right? Like maybe I'm thinking that I could drink alcohol because I had a problem with methamphetamines and I'd be okay to drink. And then I'm like, man, why am I thinking that? I'm a peer recovery coach. I'm a professional in this field and I have 2.5 years clean. Granted, that's not that long, but that's still a substantial time.
It's a lot more than many people have.
Right. And why am I thinking these things? There's something wrong with my thinking. And that's what I'm sitting here telling myself. But then I talk to a recovering addict and they're like, yeah, I think that too. I talked to someone else who's a peer recovery coach in this field and they're like, yeah, I had those thoughts. And it's not like I'm that weird. And that's like where that connection comes, realizing similarities rather than differences. Right. So I start 100%. To realize like, hey, these people are kind of like me and I'm not fighting this battle by myself.
Absolutely. And you're able to get really clear about shared experiences. Right. And it was Mark Twain, right? We always quote Mark Twain in our classes, which is he wrote, a man who never tells a lie never has to remember anything he says. Right. Doesn't that sound nice? Yeah. Do you remember when you were a compulsive liar? Like, and you had to remember, like, what did I tell them? Right. What did I say to them?
What was that thing?
What was that thing I said? Right. What did I tell them I would do? What did I that? And then you had to tell a lie to cover up the lie, and then another lie to this person to cover up that you just lied to. I mean, it was a nightmare. And now it's just like, whatever I say, I don't have to remember what I said, because if the nice part is like, I'm not having any anxiety. And I know you remember this, but like the anxiety that I would feel when somebody that I lied to came up to me and started talking to me, I'm like, are they going to bring it up? Are they going to say, what are they going to say? Right, oh God, oh God, oh God. And I'm thinking, I'm not even listening, just thinking in the back of my head, how am I going to justify this? Yada, yada, yada. Now it's like, if somebody comes up to me and be like, hey, did you say that? And like, yeah, probably. Yeah.
Probably happened. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, I don't have to lie about it. Right. But I think that really jumps into our next topic, which is, respecting your time, respecting your time, respecting other people's time. That is all based and I believe rooted inside of honesty. It comes down to, and when we say respecting your time, we're talking about it in two specific facets: respecting your time and how much time you have in recovery, and then respecting your time in relation to what you're doing with your life. So let's talk to the first point, respecting your time of how much time you have in recovery. What are your thoughts on that?
So respecting your time in recovery, 24 hours, any addict clean for 1 day is a miracle. I mean,
miracle.
Let's be honest here. Okay. An addict not using is an abnormal state. It says that in one of the 12-step literatures. You are a miracle if you have made it to 24 hours and not used. You're a miracle if you haven't used in 5 minutes. And you're trying to be in recovery. That is a miracle, because you've taken yourself to an abnormal state and you are deciding to stay there for the time being, no matter how small it is. If you've made it to 30 days, that's 4 Friday nights that you haven't gone out and got high, got drunk, whatever. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how long you have in recovery. I mean, I have 2.5 years and I've learned stuff from someone who has 24 hours.
Yeah.
They teach me things.
You just never know. And it's the problem, I think, with stigma and with addiction in the communities and all that kind of stuff, is we oftentimes fall into this mentality that really your phone again, every each time. But we fall into this mentality of, we think that because we have X amount of time, it's going to be fine, or nobody can tell us anything, or we fall into this mentality of, my recovery time is justifiable. And I can't tell you how many but recoveries end up relapsing because they get into a mindset that I've got 10 years in recovery, so I'm good. I'm good to be around alcohol. I'm good to have maybe a little bit of sip of this. I'm good to smell it. And that's like, whoa. Yeah. You are way down the lane there, man. What are you doing?
Yeah. Testing yourself in your recovery is never a good idea. Just like if you have PTSD, you're not going to test yourself by getting into a new trauma. So why are you going to do it with addiction? Right. And that's something I've taught about in my Seeking Safety class, is like, it's never a good idea. If you think you're good enough to withstand temptation and triggers and things like that, good. That's fine. Like, it's okay to think that you could withstand a trigger. But that doesn't mean I want to go out and find a trigger to see if I'm right.
No.
Just like I might be able to fight a grizzly bear. That is, maybe I could, but I'm not going to go out there and find a grizzly bear and try to fight it.
No, exactly. Exactly. I mean, that's a perfect analogy. So let's talk about respecting your time, in the other way, which is you're in recovery. How do you start looking at your time in your life? as important, because in my opinion, when we talk about respecting your time, it is one of the highest executive functions. It is one of the highest levels of importance. And this can be for recoveries. This can be without people in recovery, that when you start looking at your time in this world as a valuable commodity, you really get how important and how precious and how unique you really are. Because if you get to a place in your life where you think laissez-faire, I can show up late to things, I can do this, I don't have to do this or whatever, or I can turn in that assignment later, whatever it is, you find yourself in chaos in a hurry.
Right.
And that can be a massive problem, versus when you start to look at my time as like, this is something that is a part of me. This, being on time to a place says everything about me. It shows that the person across from me that I respect their time, like this is really what it comes down to. And this is stuff that it's what builds empires and tears down kingdoms, is respecting of one's time, of being diligent about saying, what am I going to do with the time that I have? Am I going to sit here like a bump on a log, or am I going to read? Am I going to research? Am I going to go to school? Am I going to go to work? Am I going to find a new job? Am I going to, and so often we get into this justification where we don't respect our time anymore. And we just say, well, I need free time. It's like, well, how much is free time? What do you mean?
How much free time do you need?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
because free time's important.
right.
Yes. It's important to have. It's a piece of the holistic puzzle in recovery.
And what does free time mean to you? Is another. I mean, like for me, free time might be I might go out and go fishing. If I go out and go fishing, I'm going to go out. I'm going to go fishing probably all day, and I will not see anybody for the rest of the day, and that's fine. And that's my free time. But I'm not going to do that every single day.
Sure.
It's like, what does free time look like for you? Is it watching TV? Because if that's the case, you might not want to do that all day. You might want to limit that. But if your free time's going out and, maybe you're going to go walk around and you're going to get some exercise and you're going to go hit the gym, and that's free time to you, maybe you can push it in there a little more,
Absolutely. Versus I think that people who take like a crazy abundance of free time, like here's the thing, not to quote Tony Robbins, who influential speaker extraordinaire. I
don't know who that is.
He's a giant, but he's a personality. Basically, he does conferences, and they're kind of like self-improvement. How do you do conferences and be a better you conference? And he wrote a lot of books and all this kind of good stuff. And to quote him, to say, he says, leaders are readers. And it's just like, I love that, because that points to an underlying thing that is much more deep than just reading. It points to, are you watching TV in your life? Are you watching? That's fine. That's fine. Do you have a television series that you like? A movie that you like? Great. Cool. You want to watch the new movie? Great. Are you binge watching your television so that you're going through one season every day of the week for the last month and a half? It's a problem.
Yeah, I kind of feel like what I said about fishing earlier, I was just secretly justifying my fishing thing. I was thinking about that.
No, but but it's like, do you have time to do that? Because that's an ample part of your recovery.
Right.
But it's like, do you have time to do that in your life? Did you schedule that out? That's great. Now, when you go to work, are you doing the work?
Right.
Yeah. But it's like, if you're going to work and you're living your life and doing what you can to make money, and then you're coming home and you're just plopping up and watching the TV for 5 hours, and then eating a meal that, isn't going to do much for you, and then going to sleep and waking up again and then going back to work, and you're not doing any work on yourself, that's a problem. That's a train wreck waiting to happen in recovery.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's like we said, that's not a very fulfilling life. And like we talked about,
unfulfilled trauma.
Yeah.
Or unfulfilled trauma.
Yeah. We don't want that one.
Yeah, we don't want that. No. By unpacked trauma, unfulfilled potential.
Right. Exactly. And time is a profound element of human existence, no matter how you want to look at it.
We're going in deep.
Yeah, I know. So I can give you $5 and then rob you and take that $5 back. Okay.
Threat?
It might be. I can give you 5 minutes of my time, and I don't get that 5 minutes back no matter how hard I try.
Yeah.
Right. So there's no way to regain time. Like pretty much everything else in life, there's a way to regain that. So it's not something to be wasted. It's like we have a limited amount of time.
Sure.
No matter how you want to look at it. It might be scary for some people, but that's why we see it in 12-step programs, living one day at a time. Right. I want to take it one day. One day is too much for me sometimes. I want to take it 1 second, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day. Right.
Yeah.
And that's living in the present and making the most of the time that I have right now.
Sure. And I could not agree more, because I too often see recoveries that get a year, that get 2 years, 3 years under their belt, and they have they have that itch, the itch that I think most of us get. I don't want to say all of us, but most of us get, where they wake up one morning and they say the scariest words that any recovery who has a decent chunk of time can say, which is this it? Is this it? Is this all there is? Is this?
I've had that conversation. I actually just had that conversation like a week ago with somebody.
And how scary is that? How did that conversation go? You don't got to say their name, but
yeah, I was actually the one who was talking to somebody about having those feelings. And I guess it can go to one of two ways. Like with me, it wasn't like is this all there is? Like, is this really it? But it was more of a, what else is there? You know what I'm saying? Like, what else is there to be revealed? And
there's this podcast.
Yeah, there's the podcast about recovery.
But the podcast.
But it's, more will be revealed, and that's something really cool, is like, I think like, is this it? But it's like, this is it for right now.
Yeah.
This is what you get right now, because you're right where you're supposed to be at.
Yeah.
But there's always more, and it's like, it's not a bad thing to ask, is there more? But it is a bad thing to say like, there's nothing more, like this is it.
Because that is not true.
Right.
There's always
something.
more. There's always more. And
right.
it's heartbreaking to me sometimes when I hear recoveries that are just doing so well say that of, is this it? And it indicates to me, at least, that they're on, I don't think they're in, concern of relapse anytime soon, but I think that not by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that they're at a point in their life where the pink cloud is over. Now, for those of who don't know what the pink cloud is, either, maybe you haven't reached it in recovery, you've never heard that. Rainbows and unicorn farts. Or if you're a student listening to this, Hunter, tell them what the pink cloud is.
So there's really a couple different ways that this terminology is used in addiction recovery. The first one is usually in early recovery, where people think that they'll never be tempted again, that drugs cannot touch them, that they are what's the term?
Invulnerable.
Yeah, well, no, that's not what I was looking for, but yeah, basically they're invincible to addiction, and then reality comes and smacks them in the face with the 2x4, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm not.
Very vivid imagery.
Yeah, it's a hard fall, and I've seen people do it. I've been on it myself, and like, it is a hard fall to take, to go from I'm perfect, I'm cool, to all of a sudden like, oh, that's not cool.
You're
like
saying I'm still addicted?
Right, exactly. And the other term would be riding it out, where there's a lot of good. So the second form of pink cloud. So there's a lot of good things that happen in early recovery in really fast succession. So a lot of people go from, being homeless or whatever the case may be, in whatever trauma state that they're in, that brought them into recovery. They get out of that situation and things start lining up. They get a house, they get a job, they get a car, they get a girlfriend, whatever it is, things start happening pretty fast.
I mean, the dominoes that they set up in early recovery have now started to get knocked down, and it happens. It's lightning fast. They make advancements in their life quicker than anything else that they've ever experienced in their life.
And then all of a sudden, bigger goals, bigger steps, bigger dominoes, slower, a little more time. And it gets rough.
Yeah, because I think
cloud's gone.
I think that's the perfect analogy for it, is bigger goals, bigger steps. If we're talking about getting your driver's license or your state ID, the steps are fairly straightforward. Which is, we need to go to the Secretary of State. We need to figure out what you need. Now, if you've had it taken by the law, then what's the steps in that? But if it's just something like you're applying it for the first time, or, your suspensions on the license are now up, what do we need? And a lot of times it's like, okay, well, we need this material. So we go through the paperwork and it's clear. The goal in and of itself is to get the license. But at the end of the day, there's a bunch of little micro goals that are like this. And there's not a lot of leeway. It's like, I got to have these things, versus now we're talking about going to get a master's degree in counseling. It's like, well, hold up, because there's not only 100 different goals between where you are now, because you could have a GED or you could have a bachelor's or whatever. There's not only 100 different goals from where you are now to there, but the way that those goals look can be shifting and changing, because where do you want to go and get, your undergraduate? Doesn't have to be here. And maybe you applied there, but you don't get let in. So you apply here, but you do get let in, so there's a million different things. And I think with bigger goals, it can get really, really tedious really quick, because especially people that have had the Cloud9 mentality, like,
Right.
I'm going to out you a little bit, but it's like your first year of recovery, what did you get?
A lot. I don't know. I got a car. I mean, I got a place to stay. I was homeless before I got into recovery, or I was staying on a couch, but I got a place to stay. I got a job. I got basically everything, those basic necessity needs.
You got friends, a community.
No. Yeah, for sure. And I got all those things, but then like it slowed down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the goals became much bigger, and they became
Right.
much more, they felt, I would dare say, because I don't know, I'm not you, but I would dare say that they felt like you achieved and accomplished more when you did hit a goal.
Right. If you work really hard one day, you could be like me, but no, I'm just playing.
Or moderately hard and enjoy fishing, you probably could achieve him. It's going to take you a little bit, but you could.
Yeah, pretty much. And yeah, it does get hard, but yeah.
Yeah. And I
it's
think
bigger.
with the pink cloud, you always have to be cautious. You have to, because you will hit a wall.
Mhm.
Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not a year from now, but you'll hit a wall, and
Right.
then you're going to wonder, what am I meant to be doing? And it's at that point that you have been faced, possibly for the first time in your life, with the question that all humanity has struggled with since time immemorial.
What am I here for?
What is my purpose?
Right.
Yeah.
right.
And at that point, you got to get really clear. But not only do you got to get really clear, make a plan, because how many recoveries have we seen that got clear and
Mm-hmm.
they figured out what their purpose were, but they didn't pursue it.
Right.
And we're sitting there with our like head in hand, like, what are you doing? You're such an imaginative person. You can do it. So, you could really do it, but what? Because the work is a little too hard.
Mhm.
What? Because the goal isn't going to be achieved in a couple months, but it's going to have to be achieved over the course of a few years.
Right.
Now you don't want to pursue it.
Long-term goals are hard, man. You know?
They are. That's the nature of long-term goals.
It's big, and that's where it comes, like plan A. Okay, I'm gonna self-promote again. So something we use as peer recovery coach is a plan A. So,
or it's plan A, also known somewhat as a recovery plan.
right.
Many different companies, many different places have it. CCAR has developed a fantastic
Mhm.
one to look at.
We do it best though. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, it's literally, it takes those big goals. So like my goal is eventually, my first goal is to get a bachelor's degree in social work.
Mhm.
That's what I want to do. So now I take that big goal, because that's a big goal. I'm like,
Right.
yeah, that's looking up at it, a towering big old goal, right?
Mhm.
But now I've taken it and I say, okay, so the first thing I need to do is apply for this for my FAFSA. That's step number one. And then step number two is I need to go and I need to talk to the college I want to attend and apply, which I already did. And, all that stuff's already done. But then I need to go and I need to take my placement test. And then I need to decide how many classes that I'm going to take per semester. There's steps to each of these things, right? So I don't have to look at this big towering goal anymore. Now I just need to look, okay, I need to fill out my 2021 FAFSA.
Mhm.
Step one. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And it makes it a lot easier, but it's still, and then it kind of, at least it helps me with those.
So just to be clear, the tools that you found
Mhm.
that you utilize in your workplace, you started utilizing those tools
I don't think there's any way to do that or to work in this field and not do that.
because the tools are they're too good.
Yeah.
They're too, well sharpened.
They're evidence-based for a reason. We don't
Yeah.
just use we don't just come up with, hey, this would be a really good idea. It's like, no, we find peer-reviewed journals. We find things that have worked. and we
I
use
may
those.
or may not do something like that.
He does from time to time. It's okay though.
No, but I couldn't agree more. And that I think that's the ultimate respect of time, is identifying that goal. Because I remember, a couple of, we're going back a while. It was beginning of the year, I believe it was,
Mhm.
where you weren't sure. You weren't sure what you wanted to do. You're like, man,
Right.
I'm getting so overwhelmed by this stuff, and I'm just not sure. And I told you then what I told you before, which is like, you're going to hit this point. And then I pointed to welcome to the point I was talking about,
Right.
and what did I tell you to do?
I don't remember.
Good. All right. No, I told him to first and foremost pause, because I can't emphasize this enough, because I've went through this, and I speak from experience when I'm saying this, because this is what I had to do. And this has worked time and time again when people come to me for this advice because they hit that point of like, I don't know what to do. I want to make a drastic change because I was making such advancements and movements before, and now I'm not making them as quickly and all that kind of stuff. And the first thing that I will say is pause, stop. Don't stop what you're doing. Keep on going, but stop the process. You have to interrupt that brain. And that's what we talked about earlier with kind of that external, I believe we talked about it Monday, but that external voice versus the internal voice. Stop and start to get a lot of external voices that are going on and start to ask them questions and research and ask them what they think. And then start to think for yourself, okay, what are the benefits? What are the benefits? What are the consequences of me doing this? What does this look like? What does this look like? Game it all the way out. If you're going to make a massive life change, like you were planning on doing, changing jobs, changing career fields, changing career paths completely, stop. What are you doing? X, Y, and Z.
Right. And I mean, so the way that worked out too, in that point I was in my life, I actually talked about it earlier in the podcast where I stopped having the connection and recovery that I needed, right? I thought my job, my work was going to be enough and things like that. That was at the same time period. And one thing that you encouraged me, I don't know if you remember this, but it was not only stop, but
safe to assume I remember.
Right. Look at what else might be causing this. You know, like you say, you're not like, he kind of, you talk to me in a sense of, why would you make such a big life decision when you feel like other things in your life that you can control are not in the place they're supposed to be right now? And I appreciated that because I'm like, okay, why would I decide I need to quit my job, find something else, a different career? I need to move to a different state, even possibly, while I'm not taking care of my recovery like I should be. But
so what did I say? I said, do this for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe a month. I don't remember the time frame I gave you, but do it for a long enough time so that it's not a day.
Right.
Do it for a while. Get your house in order.
Right.
And then after you get generally most of the things that you feel are unmanageable and out of control in your life back under control,
right,
then let's have that conversation again.
Right. And me as an addict, I don't like that because I like impulse decisions.
Yes, I like the impulse decisions, please. I'm paid to make quick decisions and then not regret them later.
Exactly.
No, but yeah, it was a matter of let's slow down the thinking, let's slow down the process, get everything else in order. And if you still feel this way, let's have a conversation versus what happened in the next conversation that we had after everything was in order.
I don't remember.
Yeah, well, I do. Don't worry. I can fill in the blanks for you, old buddy, old pal. So you didn't, well, obviously you didn't leave the job.
Well, yeah. And I think my life started to get a little bit better.
A heck of a lot better because what did you do? You identified the problem.
Right.
And the problem was exactly what I told you it was going to be. So, nana boo boo, I told you, right? Which was you did not focus on your recovery. Your job had become your recovery.
Right.
And in this field, that is death. It will happen. And that's why we say every class, I'm going to tell you this and you're not going to believe me. And I'm going to tell you it again, and you're still not going to believe me. And then you're going to call me in a couple of months or maybe a year in your case. And then you're going to say, you were right.
Right.
It's like
I am here now.
And it has nothing to do with me. It's like, I don't care if I'm right or not. I'm just telling you from my experience. And because I've seen it time and time and time again, people end up getting into this field. They end up getting into recovery. They get, their eyes become as big as saucers. They get really, really excited about something. And they're like, I'm a part of the movement. And I have purpose. I have belonging. I am a cog in this machine that is known as recovery or the battle against substance use disorder. And then they realize that I'm a cog, but I want to be the whole darn machine. And it's like, take a breather, calm down. Let's take a beat. So last thing I definitely wanted to discuss with you, and I thought this was super interesting, and it was something that we've talked about before is, red flags versus green flags. Right. Now, what is a red flag versus a green flag?
So yeah, a red flag and green flag. Okay. So I think most people probably know what we're talking about here, but red flags are going to be the things that you start to see in your life that identify that there's a problem, that you need to stop and fix whatever's going on. So for instance, those things might be like isolation. They could be, telling lies. So if you started lying to people, I think that would be a rather large red flag for you. So things like that, just things that pop up that are identifiable as being a problem. And then green flags are the opposite. So they're the things that you need to see up in order to know that your recovery is going on the right track. So a lot of times they intermix. So a green flag is I need to go to 3 meetings a week, and a red flag is I'm not going to 3 meetings a week.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of like the green flag will go down and the red flag pops up. That's how it's going to be a lot of times, but it's basically just being able to identify a problem as it starts to arise. And I think that's extremely important for people in recovery because it helps us not justify those things.
Absolutely. And I think with people, kind of that external voice, like you see somebody that is starting to be, the canary in the coal mine is starting to chirp, you're starting to see red flags. There once was a great man who said that, they shall be known by their fruits.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality in recovery and out of recovery. That's the reality with everybody. It's like, if their life is starting to look unmanageable, it more than likely is unmanageable.
Right.
It is that plain and simple. When
Right.
it comes to addiction, people want to intellectualize it. They want to make it bigger than it way more complicated than it really is, which is, if I'm starting to perceive that your life is unmanageable, barring that I don't know a bunch of different things about you, more than likely it's unmanageable. There's something going wrong right now.
And that's one of the things that's also helpful for, we talked about connectedness and recovery and having those outside external voices, but the list of red and green flags, like having something like that actually identified, extremely helpful for the individual as well.
Yeah.
If I have a list and I say, these things cannot happen in my life or I'm heading back towards addiction, it's a lot harder for me to be like, well, it's not that big of a deal when those things start to pop up.
Yeah, if it's clear as day, it's written out, carved into stone, if you will. And those things can range too. It can be anywhere from being dishonest to, showing up late for work again. I mean, because being dishonest can be a big red flag, but showing up late for work more than, once in a week, where not once in a week, but
I was going to say that's
no,
okay.
more than once in a while. And all of a sudden you've done it 2 or 3 times in this week.
Can I show up late to work once a week?
Absolutely not.
I was just checking.
No. Hard no. But you don't show up late ever, and then all of a sudden you show up late 3 times in a week.
Right.
Huge red flag. Red flags up and down.
Right. If I did not show up to work one day, that is a massive. I have not missed a day of work in 2.5 years. I've not missed a day of work since I've gotten to recovery. If I all of a sudden missed a day of work, huge red flag.
Yep.
And it's not justifiable. Because
now that's to say that he didn't call any, he did no show.
Right. I've had vacation days. I've been sick, like those things happen, but I have not no call, no showed. And if I was going to be late, I would call somebody and tell them I'm going to be late. If I did not do those things, massive red flag.
Massive red flags across the board. And those are things that, it is something that you should create a running list for yourself. If new in recovery. Now, if you're older in recovery, you can create a mental list. That's probably not that bad. And the reality is, the longer you're in recovery, the more people, theoretically, the more people around you should be able to identify your green flags and should be able to call out your red flags if those start to pop up.
Yeah. And you probably, if you work a 12-step program at a sponsor, and then you'd be like, oh, I missed work. And he's like, you did. What
happened now? You want to run that by me again, Chief?
Right.
No, but if you're early in recovery, it's not a bad idea to create a physical list.
Great idea.
To create a physical list, not only the pros and cons list, but at the end of the day, the physical list that says, if you see A, B, C, D, F, whatever, make sure that
a couple letters there,
whatever it's a lot of things, right? But if you see these things start to happen, notify me. If you see these things start to happen, here's my sponsor's number. If you see these things start to happen, feel free to call my wife. Like, that's okay. And that's creating, to sum it all up of everything that we've talked about this last hour, that creates the connectedness to the community. So it creates that connectedness and that external accountability. That creates the connectedness to honesty, the honesty with yourself, and your ability to be humble enough to create that and give that to somebody and say, like, you see these things in me start to behave like this, you let me know, you let this person know. It shows respecting of time more than anything, because it shows, like, I respect my time and the rest of the time that I have left on this earth, that I will create a list to create accountability for myself somewhere else. So creating a list early on in recovery ain't that bad. I plenty enough lists.
Good idea. Right?
Pretty good idea. So any other thoughts on red flags, green flags, my man?
Not really. I just want to say, to kind of sum it up, you got to keep connected in the recovery community. You got to be honest with yourself and with others, especially with yourself. you got to respect your time. You got to respect other people's times. And then you got to be aware of the things that are going to lead you back to a relapse.
Absolutely. So if you like this podcast, of course, you can listen to us this next Friday. We will be interviewing Hunter this next Friday. And other than that, we'll see some of you Friday. We'll see some of you next week. Thanks.
Have a great one.